Hi, this is Eric Froton with another Letter Winners podcast. Myself here with my co-host Michael Bainbridge from the CFF site. Bowl preview number one, Michael. Hard to believe we're 15, 16, 17, I don't know, however many weeks we are into the season at this point. But we have a pretty interesting slate of bowl games I can't wait to get into and tackle, and some news that are related to said games. So we'll dive right into that. Reese White for Coastal Carolina versus Northern Illinois, listed as probable. You're going to have him and Shamari Jones, it sounds like, in that backfield. Should be a devastating 1-2 punch as it has been all year. Gosh, I mean, Coastal Carolina ranked top 5 offensively in terms of offensive performance. All the analytics are just incredible. Top, I think, second best in terms of explosiveness, explosive play rate. That's a big-time offense here you want to be invested in. Danzel McKinley-Lewis, our friend, Michael, versus Middle Tennessee, listed as questionable here. And, that's important because Middle Tennessee has a pretty good pass defense. It's where on the ground where they get hit up a little bit more. And Toledo ranked 17th in terms of overall offensive performance when it comes to being on the ground, as opposed to being in the 60s when it comes to the passing acumen. And then lastly, Jake Haener, Fresno State against UTEP, listed as questionable. We know he entered the portal, came back out of the portal. We figured out it could be some issues transferring with head coach Kalen DeBoer over to Washington. So, Michael, your thoughts on these news bites?
Yeah, starting with Reese White. He was on the depth chart for the first time in 4 weeks. So all indications are he's going to play. They had, I don't know if it was a beat writer, but it was just somebody that had access to practice for this week, saw Reese White on the practice field, said he's moving around well. So got to figure he's going to play. Of course, we get surprises during bowl season, and it's college fantasy, right? So we're used to seeing some surprises with guys surprisingly sitting out. But all our indications are he's going to play, and it does affect Shamari Jones because these past 4 weeks when he was out, he was averaging 20 carries per game. With Reese White in the lineup prior to that, nowhere close to 20 carries a game. So, I did sprinkle in a little under 104.5 rushing yards for Shamari Jones. I know they're facing this putrid, I guess you could say, NIU rush defense.
That's fair.
They look strong against Kent State a couple weeks ago, but so I don't know if they've fixed any issues. But so yeah, I mean it does affect Shamari Jones's value, I guess you could say, this week with White back in the lineup. McKinley-Lewis, I didn't even realize that he was questionable. He's listed as such on FanDuel. So we sprinkled in a little under bet on his receiving yards for this game, because Toledo, when they do throw it, which is not often because of their devastating ground attack, they spread it around. Matt Landers, Isaiah Winstead, they'll spread it around to 4 or 5 guys. So
Deven Maddox as well.
Deven Maddox, yep. So you have to like the under there if he does in fact plays, which obviously we're hoping he does because of that bet. So we'll watch out for that. And then Haener, obviously, I haven't been able to find any information. I think they're keeping their lips locked at this point as to whether he's going to play or not. When he did his, I guess you want to call it, apology video, when he announced he was coming back to Fresno, he did say that he's excited to play for Jeff Tedford in 2022. So I don't know if that's a subtle hint that he's not going to play. I'm not sure, but so we'll have to monitor that tomorrow morning. Obviously, if he doesn't play, they're going to be one of 2 freshmen starting, so we're probably out on the receivers in our DFS lineup. So just a situation to monitor.
Yeah, certainly. And regarding North Illinois, obviously something that helped when it came to that run defense was a pretty awesome run offense, where they basically grinded out. I think they held the ball for 40 minutes of that game and just grinded down Kent State, which with an inferior front seven, obviously. And it's not good news against Coastal Carolina, or even better. But Northern Illinois quietly a top 25 rushing offense. Moving on to DeWayne McBride, UAB running back versus BYU, listed as questionable. It's a problem. McBride's been great over the second half of the season. Started out a little slow for like the first 4 weeks. The CFF community was wondering if he was a bust. Like, oh my
Remember
God.
everybody freaking out at the start of the season? Oh my
Yes.
God, he's such a bust, right?
Yep, absolutely. Well, that he evened out, as did UAB. They got to their 8-win mark to hit the over in order to, which everybody was happy about, of course. Took him the last game of the season. But McBride's been excellent in terms of his last, 6 weeks, second half of the schedule. With him questionable against BYU, that's, certainly a problem for UAB. They're already touchdown dogs. Motivation always a factor in bowl season. Always have to put that into play. And with no DeWayne McBride, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Anyways, Neil Pau'u versus UAB is out. And we've seen Pau'u serve as a deep threat type and has had some pretty big games, but he's been up and down. There's been fluctuations. He's been inconsistent, but still an important part of that Brigham Young wide receiver core. Gunnar Romney, Sampson, and Puka Nacua we'll get to later. Certainly looking to get boosts. And Marshall quarterback Grant Wells left last week's game. Not last week, excuse me, the championship game. Said to be probable. Everything I've heard out of Marshall's camp is saying that he will be fine with the extra time, the extra rest. He'll be good to go. So that's something to certainly be mindful of against Louisiana. Michael, your thoughts on those news bites?
Yeah, I know you're going to hit on Jermaine Brown later in the show as he fills in for DeWayne McBride, or potentially fills in for DeWayne McBride if he does, in fact, not play. But what makes that even more intriguing is that the RB3, Lucius Stanley, entered the transfer portal. So you have a dynamic of if McBride is out too, that would lean towards all the carries going towards Jermaine Brown in that matchup. So definitely want to keep tabs on McBride's status. Neil Pau'u wasn't on the depth chart versus USC in their finale, remains not on the depth chart this week. So I guess we listed him as out. I don't know if he's officially declared out, but have to assume not on depth chart, not going to play. So that bumps up Samson Nacua, who I'll touch on later as my bargain bin in DFS. And then Grant Wells, same thing. Everything I'm reading is that Wells is going to play versus Louisiana. Tough matchup, but as an underdog, you kind of feel like Marshall's going to have to throw the ball against the Raging Cajuns. So, I also sprinkled in a little over on his 242 passing yards on PrizePicks. We haven't projected it 298, so felt like I was getting some decent value there. So that helps everybody involved with the Marshall offense, obviously, if Wells plays.
Yeah, and with Louisiana having the turnover in the coaching staff with Billy Napier leaving for the Florida job, taking some of his staff with him, definitely the continuity factor and the motivation factor after going 12-1. This season, winning the Sun Belt already, there's always that question with teams in flux. So definitely points in Mr. Wells' favor. Last round of news. Mitchell Tinsley, superstar wide receiver, Western Kentucky. Man, he was obviously Jarrett Stearns was the straw that stirs the drink, but Mitchell Tinsley emerged to be that number 2 wide receiver that was a top 10 college fantasy football wideout this year. Top 10. Talk about an offense that can feed, and that's something certainly to be interested in when it comes to the Texas Tech wideouts. Miles Price, as Ukanwa sticks around. Very interesting to see what happens over there. Anyways, Mitchell Tinsley versus Appalachian State listed as questionable. That's an issue as discussed. Zach Kittley, their offensive coordinator, already gone to Texas Tech, so they'll be without their architect of the number 1 passing offense in the country. Tinsley, questionable. Something to be mindful of. Chris Smith versus Marshall. Louisiana running back is out. And we've seen Smith kind of, it's been more of that 3-headed monster type rotation we've seen from Napier over the past few years with Regis and Raymond Calais and obviously the great Elijah Mitchell, who everybody's talking about in the NFL circles. But with Chris Smith out, Amani Bailey's certainly stepped up. He's had an increased role. Certainly Montrell Johnson. So that's definitely a boost for them in DFS circles. And then lastly, Corey Sutton, one of the greatest wideouts in the history of Appalachian State, versus Western Kentucky. He is out as well. So give a bump to Thomas Hennigan with at the very least, and then Malik Williams over the middle. Michael, your thoughts on those news items?
Yeah, Western Kentucky obviously sticks out with regards to Tinsley. Now, I put on the show sheet that he was questionable. Now, he's healthy, right? But he's in the transfer portal, and I've read mixed messaging, I guess if you want to call it that, as to I guess he's undecided as to whether he's going to play or not in this bowl game. So, as you said, top 10 fantasy receiver this year, have to keep tabs if he plays or not. If he doesn't, I mean, obviously the main players get a boost. Jarrett Stearns, David Davis, Malachi Corley, those guys get a boost. Who steps in for Mitchell Tinsley may not matter, right? Maybe they'll just hit or Bailey Zappi will throw it to the proven guys. But, Ben Ratzlaff, who,
preseason darling.
Preseason darling, we thought was going to be what Mitchell Tinsley was. He plays the same alignment as the wide receiver alignment on the left side as Tinsley. So, and he did catch a 19-yard pass against UTSA in that championship game. So Tinsley out, maybe Ratzlaff steps into that, and we see his emergence as to what we thought would happen prior to the season starting. So Tinsley's obviously a big one that we'll be watching for. Smith, it's going from a three-headed monster to a two-headed monster now. Even with Billy Napier off to Florida, I think they're just going to stick to their roots in this game. It's going to be a rotation in the backfield between Montrell Johnson, Monty Bailey. We have seen Bailey step up, though, with double-digit carries in the last 3 games, so he would be the obvious target. But, Marshall is 12th in Conference USA in rush defense, and if you're bottom-tier rush defense in Conference USA, you're pretty bad. So I think regardless of who's in that backfield, they'll find success against the Marshall defense. And then Corey Sutton being out, obviously that bumps Thomas Hennigan, Malik Williams, bumps up their value. And then I think Christian Wells would be the primary beneficiary of Sutton being out, stepping into his starting spot. So possibly a min price guy for your DFS lineups.
Sister Christian, well, your time has come, as the Night Ranger Classic goes. Moving on to our sides. Bahamas Bowl. I mean, who has been waiting for the Bahamas Bowl, right? Gosh, I wish I was in attendance there instead of here in Seattle, Washington today, Michael.
Is it raining?
It very indeed was. Yes, it was raining. As soon as I got in, I'm like, all right, well, we're not in San Diego anymore, unfortunately. But that being said, Bahamas Bowl, very jealous. Played in Thomas Robinson Stadium in Nassau between Middle Tennessee State and Toledo. Line is at 10.5. 10 at the time of print. We'll see how it goes. Where that
I think I saw it at 9.
Settles.
9.5.
9.5. Yeah. All right, so it's moving in the direction of that's what we like to hear. At least move in Middle Tennessee's direction. Get yourself under that hook of 10 points. Toledo. I mean, this is a team that had real MAC title aspirations, and even when they lost, like they had 3 early losses that kind of torpedoed their season. They finished strong. But even against Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Northern Illinois, they had 68% or better post-game win expectancies against those games. So even though they're a 7-win team, they're really, if you look at their second-order win total, like they're in the 8.5 range. They're a little bit better than that. And frankly, Middle Tennessee is a little bit worse than that. When it comes to what Toledo wants to do, like you said, we've talked about this a little bit, Mike. They want to pound the ball. They're one of the top 20 rushing offenses in the country. Behind Brian Koback, former Kentucky recruit, 4-star, transferred over here, has really taken care of business, become a legitimate star. Toledo's averaging almost 200 yards per game rushing, 5.5 yards per carry. Their defense has been absolutely legit. Their passing offense has been middling, like around middle of the pack in terms of nationally. Matt Landers, as we discussed, a whole cadre of wideouts really that they use. But the defense is the best in the MAC. Allowed 21 points per game, 342 yards per game. Ranked 23rd in the nation in terms of overall defensive performance, according to CFB Winning Edge. And, all the metrics across the board are excellent. Yards per play, 13th in the country. Points per drive, 1.5 points per drive. It's 13th best in the country. 18th in terms of suppressing explosiveness. This is a legit badass defensive unit. And Middle Tennessee, they've already gone through 2 QBs. Bailey Hawkman started, NC State transfer, adios, went retired. Kate Cunningham came in pretty good. Had a nice little run, had a few good games, but then he gets injured. And now we have a gruesome twosome of Mike DeLilio and Nick Vadiato. Rare Italian-American quarterback combo for Middle Tennessee. All right, so with the instability under center, obviously there's going to be instability in their offensive performance, and that's certainly the case. They rank 106 in yards per play, 96 points per drive, 38% success rate, 114th in explosive play rate. And that's just overall with their rushing. They average 3.5 yards a carry, 120 yards per game. They're just completely ineffectual on the ground. All right, defensively, they've been pretty good. All told, slightly better than average in terms of nationally, 24 points per less in 5 of their last 6. So they are a team that has been cresting, so to speak. They're good against the pass. Real good, but not great in running like power situations, 105th in stuff rate. They get really tread on in the red zone, not good with their goal to goal, stop ratio. Ranked 86 with a 4.5% sack rate, despite dialing up the 6th most blitzes in the country. Thank you, Scott Schaefer, defensive coordinator. So I put all that together.
I was going to say, you did your research on this.
Yes. Hey, well, it's bowl season. There are less games, so I have a little more time to get into it. I wrote a bowl preview too for, if you want to hear my extended thoughts, I wrote a bowl preview on this game.
You gave us your extended thoughts.
I did. I gave it. Mike, I'm excited. I'm excited. I got a little extra juice on this one for you. So, point being, Toledo, 9.5 points. I think this has all the makings of a good old-fashioned Jason Candle and company come in and just roll all over a listless Middle Tennessee team with a great defense. I just can't see Middle Tennessee covering. I'm gonna go with Toledo minus 9.5 in some spots.
Real quick, I didn't dive deeply into this game like you did, but it's just funny reading the message boards of both of these teams, and these 2 fan bases are so sick of their head coaches, right? You got Toledo; they're they're reminiscing on the Matt Campbell era, and Jason Candle they're average at this point. Toledo, they've been average for the last few years under his direction, and then I think it's time for Stockstill to hang them up at this point. Impressive. They made a bowl game this year when I had thought they had no shot at it, but. It's time to hand over the keys to, I don't know, Brent Stockstill, maybe.
It was funny. Brent Dearman, their offensive coordinator, was the OC for Kansas. Took a step down from the Power 5, Kansas, down to Middle Tennessee to be their offensive coordinator, simply to get away from Les Miles before he was the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, I thought maybe he was looking for like I said, Rick Stockstill's on his last leg, so maybe he's the
take
coach
over
in waiting at this point. But I don't think any of these fan bases are excited to be in this game.
No, I think that's pretty fair. And then moving on to our next game, the Lending Tree Bowl. Played in Mobile, Alabama, between Eastern Michigan and Liberty all the way up. What's it currently at? Was it 8? It started at 7.5. I think it was at 8.5. Now I think it's up to 9.5 now at this point.
They probably kept it a little lower with Malik Willis maybe being undecided, but he's gonna play.
You see, he's going. This looks like a Malik Willis showcase, and to what he does well. He's ranked 90.9 in terms of overall offensive grade by PFF. He's one of the best running quarterbacks we've seen in the past half decade. Without a doubt. Gets sacked, leads the nation with 50 sacks. He also, in terms of scrambles, has led the nation in scrambles the last 2 seasons. So if you see him get harassed, he's probably pulling it down because he is legitimately dynamic in the open field. And that's why, you'd think they're excellent with a quarterback like Willis. They'd be this awesome passing offense. They're not. It's their rushing attack that really does it, and it's behind his legs. They rank 12th in success rate, 8th in marginal efficiency, 9th in big play rate. With their rushing attack, which, hey, that's a problem against an Eastern Michigan team that defensively, let's just say, they're very challenged, allowing almost 200 yards per game rushing, 442 yards on the ground on overall, and just getting pounded between the tackles on a regular basis. Like, the teams just convert third downs at a ridiculous pace. 117th ranking in terms of third down success rate. And then on the other side, Liberty, really good defense, kind of underrated in terms of when you think of Malik Willis in the offense. 21.5 points per game, 315 yards per game allowed. It's 10th best in the nation, like quietly serious. And what they're best at actually is their pass, ranked 5th in the country, allowing 174 passing yards per game. That's phenomenal, obviously. Their pass rush is legit. 10% sack rate, 35% sack pressure rate, both top 20 nationally. And look, Eastern Michigan wants to throw the ball. That's what they're here to do.
That's all they can do.
That's all they can do. Yeah, 282 passing yards per game, top 30th nationally in success rate, efficiency, completion rate. So, they hit Hassan Beydoun, Tanner New on those shorter to intermediate routes. But look, you're playing right in the teeth of Liberty here. Okay, that's what Liberty does. They do pass defense. One-dimensional offense for Eastern Michigan. Malik Willis showcase game. An undersized defensive line that gets rolled up on anyways, going up against this juggernaut of Liberty. This is another team. Second, they're an 8.2 win team as opposed to a 7-win team, according to S&P. So, and then Eastern Michigan is a 4.8 second-order win total team as opposed to a 6.6. All right, so they're 2.5 games almost worse, according to S&P Plus, in their second-order win totals than what Liberty is. All right, these teams aren't even in the same they're not even shouldn't be on the same field. This is going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a Malik Willis showcase. It's going to be a massacre. Liberty, lay them. Lay the points. Doesn't matter. I'm going Liberty here, Michael.
For my play, I'm taking Western Kentucky over App State +3. When I fill out my NCAA bracket in March Madness, I aside from any statistical analysis, I always want to look for the storylines, right? Storylines just seem to happen. One year, Michigan and Duke were on the same side of a bracket, and just the rivalry that they had, way back in the early 90s. I was like, okay, they're going to get pitted together, and it's just going to happen. It's just how the world works, and so the media has storylines galore before that game, right? I'm not trying to make light of this situation, obviously, because of the horrific, weather that happened in Kentucky, but this past weekend. But I saw a picture on Twitter at Western Kentucky's wearing these decals on the back of their helmets, kind of honoring the victims from those tornadoes that went through Kentucky. So I feel like Western Kentucky has some motivation in this matchup, playing for their state. So this is, stats aside, I'm gonna roll with Western Kentucky here. I know he spoke on the Mitchell Tinsley news about him being questionable, but Zach Kitley's still around, Bailey Zappi's still around. Weather looks good. I think they'll be able to throw on a pretty good Appalachian State pass defense. But I'll take Western Kentucky in the motivation factor in this matchup.
Interesting. Sounds good. Yeah, very salient point, Michael. Moving on to the DFS portion of things. DraftKings, my core 2 plays. Chance Nolan, Oregon State, playing a Utah State team. And you want to talk about second-order wins. My gosh, Colorado State literally giving them a game. I mean, handing Steve Adazio, the now departed Steve Adazio. I can't believe I'm so excited the first time I've gotten to say that. Adios. Terrible, terrible head coach. But they handed them a win. I mean, this has been a fairly uninspiring Utah State team that even in the Mountain West Championship, they got to play against a San Diego State team that had major COVID issues. Like everything seemed to go right for them. It's you want to talk about storyline? It's Blake Anderson takes over for Gary Anderson. He's come in and done some damage, but playing. Hey, they're going to the Power Five now. They're playing the big boys, and Chance Nolan has been a pretty steady running back and is good in terms of contributing on the ground. He's averaging around 30 yards per game in terms of rushing yards, and he scored a rushing touchdown in each of the past 3 games, scoring 3 touchdowns in 2 of the past 3. 29 points against Oregon in the Civil War. Good showing, through 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. 27 points against Stanford. He's been a consistent, 15 points or more in 5 of the last 6 weeks. I just think with the potential for more against a soft Utah State defense, I feel good about Chance Nolan, who's on the lower side of the salary structure here, as a good core play for $7,000 in your secondary QB spot. And I like to pair him with Puka Nacua. We talked a little bit about how Pau'u is out. Nacua has been, ever since their game against South Florida, non-conference game on the 25th of September, he has been awesome. Double digits in every single one of those games except for one. He's on a nice run here. We had 30 points, 30.5 against Virginia, 27 against Idaho State, 27.3 against Georgia State, and still another 14.2 against USC. Has scored touchdowns in 5 of the last 6 games. So at $4,900, sub 5,000, depressed slate, obviously. Only got a few games really to work with. Give me Puka Nacua at $4,900.
Is it Nacua or Nacua?
It's Nacua. You have not watched a lot of you're asleep, Michigan boy, by the time the West Coast games rolled around. Let me handle that, okay? I'm covering those games. So yeah, it is Puka Nacua. I guarantee you on that one. I'm not lobbing my particular pronunciation here. Shout out.
Isn't it amazing how our picks just seemingly are the guys that have the most difficult names to pronounce? Somehow, some way, we pick those guys. I have an easy one here with BJ Baylor. I'm going opposite you on this play. Again, susceptible Utah State defense, as you mentioned, but I think Oregon State should just be able to ground and pound their way to victory here. Oregon State's one of the best offensive lines in the country. They are 3rd in rush play success rate, 3rd in the nation in line yards, number 1 in power success, and 17th in stuff rate. So I have a lot of BJ Baylor over 94.5 rushing yards. So I'm obviously hoping this comes to fruition, but I like the strength of Oregon State with their running game, with their offensive line, keep the passing game of Utah State off the field. I think they'll just bleed the clock and come out with a victory. So I like that core play for my lineups there. And then Malik Willis, you touched on it. It's a showcase game for him. As long as he plays, I think he can get, upwards of 23, 24 fantasy points and a half against this Eastern Michigan defense, which actually, if you look at it, Eastern Michigan's only allowed 22 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. So you're immediately thinking, I got to stay away from that. But as you indicated, like teams can just ground and pound against that Eastern Michigan defense. Game script sets up where they don't even have to throw the ball. So I think that's why you see the truncated numbers there. So Liberty doesn't really have a running game, right? Outside of Malik Willis. So I think he's just
a 3-headed monster. Yeah, with Shedrow and Mack.
Who average all like 30 rushing yards a game. So your lineups are going to start with Malik Willis this week.
Absolutely. Can't argue with that. On to the bargain bin. We talked about DeWayne, McBride, and the counter to Mr. McBride is Jermaine Brown, converted like slot receiver / he's a true all-purpose back type. And he has been the yin to DeWayne McBride's yang pretty much all season. and is a pretty seasoned guy. He's been around for a while there in UAB. He's well established, but a true dual threat. Coming off a game against UTEP where he had 16 rushes, 88 yards, 3 touchdowns, a pair of catches for 13 yards. The more carries he gets, the more productive he is. If he's given double-digit carries, he's going to give you double-digit points. It's pretty much just math at that point. So I really like you said, with Lucius heading out of town, DeWayne McBride, questionable. Anytime you hear running backs questionable, bowl game, really? Yeah, it's probably going to be Jermaine Brown. And plus, against a pretty stout BYU defense, Kalani Sitake, motivation-wise, just been given a new contract extension, staff's in place. You got to think that they're going to have to try to be creative in the ways that they generate offense. And with Jermaine Brown being that all-purpose tool, I think he gets plenty of look at $4,300. And then going to Liberty in the showcase game, again, I'm going to kind of piggyback on Malik Willis. Kevin Shaa, it's been like those 3 receivers, it's been a 3-headed sort of weave, Demario Douglas himself. Yeah, and, Shaa has been kind of and Davis, exactly. He's been kind of the third leg of that trio. And when it comes to that sort of a price point, $4,200, short slate, I like him. It's going to be a showcase. It's going to be points. I think Willis throws for a few touchdowns. I think it's a pretty decent shot that Shaa ends up getting one of them. It's pretty much math when it comes to the amount of snaps he's playing. Give him a go on that bargain front.
Yep, low ownership there too, as you said, with being the third option. Real quick on mine, because we've pretty much covered them at this point. Samson Nacua had 7 targets in the finale against USC. He's min-priced on DraftKings. So, like you said, he's starting over Neil Pau'u. So I think you have to jam him in your lineup at min pricing. Montrell Johnson with Chris Smith out. He's going to share carries with Amani Bailey. And we already spoke on the Marshall run defense. I think Louisiana is going to find quite a bit of success on the ground. So Montrell Johnson, a stud freshman that you named to monitor moving forward for the next couple of years. Yep, he's a stud. So
great deal.
And he's 4,000. I mean, a guy that's going to get 10 plus carries, you have to.
And he gets a lot of goal line work too.
Yep,
absolutely. He's always involved in the short yardage, without a doubt. And coming up next, our our PrizePicks favorite prop picks. You will use, please, the promo code BETSPERTS, and you'll get a match of up to, I believe, $200 for your first installment. And these, I'm pumped. I just moved back to California, and I can do this in California. Did I tell you that? I can do DraftKings.
No, I didn't know.
I put in a line. It was like, oh my God, I can do it. So excited. So, I know that it's expanding its reach a lot more, and that's good things because myself, Michael, anybody who's a college football, DFS, CFF guy, we all love the props are the best. And you can get some pretty good early lines. That's the thing. PrizePicks puts them out before anybody else. They're the first ones to put out these props. So, always a chance to get a good edge on these BetSperts picks. Anyways, moving on. My first BetSperts pick, I like Jaron Hall. We've talked a little bit about BYU's passing attack. 274.5 yards in order to hit that. I think he does. Gosh, he's going to 276 against USC, 312 against Georgia State, 298 Idaho State, 349 against Virginia, 143 against Washington State, but then 342 against Baylor, 302 against Boise State. He is consistently going over that. And these are against, Power 5 teams. Baylor, they're 342 against Baylor. Boise State, come on. These are better teams and better defenses, and he's trending up after getting dinged up a little bit earlier in the season than we're dealing with UAB at a CUSA level here. So I just think it's we're all over the BYU passing attack, as you can see from everything here. And then Trevon Bradford, Oregon State, under 0.5 touchdowns. Anytime I see a touchdowns prop, and Michael, this is a pet peeve of mine, the touchdown props on PrizePicks. We talk about this seemingly every week, where there's so much variance in that. It's such it's so much easier for root for something to not happen and much more likely than it is for something to happen. Bradford has received touchdown passes in 4 games this season. Just 4 out of the last, I believe, 11 we're looking at here. It's just you're asking for things to happen. While I do like them, obviously, to win, and I like Nolan, will Trevon Bradford catch a touchdown? I'm going under. Michael.
Yeah. No, just a real quick heads up on that one. I don't think we mentioned it in the injury channel. I like that as well. Just to hedge it a little bit, Treshawn Harrison out for the first half for Oregon State. I think he had a targeting penalty the last game they played. So just something to monitor there. But real quick, mine were Cole Tucker over 4 receptions. He's averaging around 10 targets a game the last 4 weeks. And I think as an 11-point dog now, NIU is going to have to throw it this week. I know we've discussed NIU. We like a lot of the overs there, and they're low on PrizePicks because of just how the last 2 games played out. Remember, against Western Michigan, they did not play any of their starters because they had the championship game locked up at that point, and then obviously the Kent State matchup where they ran it 80% of the time.
Yeah,
so they didn't need to throw it.
So 40 minutes of game time they held.
Seriously, that game was depressing. I was heavy Kent State, NIU, and all my DFS lineup, so that was depressing. But we benefit because all these numbers are really low for Cole Tucker, Rocky Lombardi, Rudolph. So I've got a lot of overs there, trusting that they can at least move the ball a bit against Coastal Carolina. And then Devin Thompkins, over 5.5 receptions. Again, a number that just feels too low for a guy that I think is top 10 in the country in targets this season. He's the bona fide wide receiver 1. He's not.
I think he was 2. I think he was number 2 in targets.
Even better, right? He hasn't hit that mark in the last in 3 of the last 5 games, but in those 3 games, 5 receptions, 5 receptions, 5 receptions, right? So he is towing the line of that. So when he misses, it's at least close there. So positive game script. They're going to have to probably come back against Oregon State. So I think he hits that with ease.
Sounds good. Can't argue with that. And the game script, like you said, is going to be pass slanted. That's what they do. And you got a senior quarterback in Logan Bonner, who's run Blake Anderson's offense for 4 years. So you've got experience at least, and you're not throwing out our next player here on FanDuel. As we've discussed a little bit, FanDuel's done a great job in terms of really expanding their props offerings. Like, they have a lot of stuff. Like, they just have more players listed than DraftKings. You got to give it to them. And this week they have Mike DeLillo. DeLillo? I don't know. We're going to be watching the game. I will know his name now because he's been mentioned a couple times, and we are recommending. He's up there for 97.5 passing yards. We're going to take the under on that. Reason being is Nick Vattiato is starting. He's already been given the start by Rick Stockstill. And if you look at these games, it's kind of been DeLillo is the whatever.
Mikey
D is the running option. He's real good on the ground. You see him, he's probably going to pick up 40, 50 yards, but they're running the option with him pretty much. He's not throwing the ball much. He's only gone over 97.5 yards one time. I'm not saying that he won't play, but it's the same principle we've seen before as we talked about with our boy, the great Alex Padilla. Split quarterback situations and unders go hand in hand. Anytime that situation's, you're going to get the opportunity to do that. Game flow, you just don't know. He's the second QB in. Go for it. Mike and I tossed a couple of units on it, so we're going with the under 97.5 passing yards. We're also fading, conversely, because Toledo's pass defense is so good. We're also fading a couple of the other guys. Jalen Lane is on there for 33.5 yards.
Jaron Pierce.
As is Jaron Pierce, 33.5 yards. I think it'd be worse you get a split out of those two.
Yep.
So that's pretty much it. We're kind of fading Middle Tennessee, but I think the best play there is DeLillo because, hey, maybe Vattiato comes out and looks good, and DeLillo just doesn't get in to the second half.
He'll
It doesn't get in
snapped.
until late.
He'll get snapped, though. Yep.
Just doesn't get in until late, which is what the MO's been prior to every single other game this year. He's only done it once where he was like 121 yards. So that's you got to play the odds, play the percentages, and that's where we are on FanDuel. And that's going to wrap up a 40 minutes. All right, we went a little long today. It's bowl season. We're in the spirit.
It was your bowl game breakdown, son.
It was my bowl game, wasn't it? I mean, I wrote them all out. If I'm going to do all this work, I'm going to try to get to the nuts and bolts. Sorry about that, everybody. But enjoy. Have a great game time's coming up.
I got to finish my lineups.
Mike's got to finish his lineups. Have a good one. Thank you for listening and having a great bowl season here with the letter winners.